As someone who's spent a lot of time working on multiplayer titles and implementing crossplay, it's a topic that's particularly interesting to me. In this video, I'm going to do something a bit different to my normal stuff, and rather than a review, I want to talk specifically about crossplay. I'm going to give a brief history of crossplay, outline some of its pros and cons, and then outline some good use cases for it. Finally, I'm going to make some predictions about the future of crossplay, but let's start by defining crossplay. Crossplay is the functionality of a game allowing players on different platforms to play with each other. Although sometimes it's used to refer to play across distribution platforms like Steam or Epic, more commonly it's used to refer to play across consoles and PC, and that's mostly what I'm focusing on here. For example, Halo Infinite and Rocket League both support crossplay between consoles and PC. For a long time, this kind of thing was rare, as most games were reliant on the servers of whatever platform the game was being played on for multiplayer. Nowadays, it's becoming more common for studios to host their own servers, which makes crossplay easier. In addition, Xbox, Epic, and some others have begun allowing games to use their services for crossplay. Although crossplay was previously much more uncommon than it is today, it actually dates back a long time. The earliest example I could find of a game having crossplay goes right back to the beginning of console multiplayer with the Dreamcast. There was a racing game called 4x4 Evo released on the Dreamcast in 2000, which featured crossplay between Dreamcast and PC. But I can't find much online about the game, and it seems like it wasn't particularly well received. I also found an old GameSpot article talking about crossplay being added to Quake 3, but I couldn't find any other information about that. Console multiplayer was already a new thing, so no one was really trying crossplay. There were some exceptions though. A notable example is Final Fantasy XI, an MMO which featured crossplay and actually ran pretty smoothly. By the nature of already needing their own servers and having a big network team, MMOs being one of the earliest successful crossplay games makes a lot of sense. For the most part though, crossplay wasn't really at the forefront of gamers' minds and it wasn't very common. I think the earliest game I played with crossplay was Shadowrun 2007. The game was pretty mediocre and the crossplay had a lot of problems. Since the game wasn't really designed with controller players in mind, they had a huge disadvantage. It wasn't until the 8th generation consoles when crossplay really got started. Since the launch of the Xbox One and PlayStation 5, we've had Minecraft Bedrock, Street Fighter V, Rocket League, Borderlands, and loads more games launch with crossplay. It's a staple feature now which some publishers are pushing quite heavily. Some people love crossplay and some people hate it, and I think it's fair to say there are some good use cases and some bad ones. Let's talk about the pros of crossplay, and then we'll get into the cons afterwards. So one of the biggest pros of crossplay is that it creates a single community and stops players from being segregated. This is a particularly good strength in niche games, where without crossplay, some platforms would be completely dead. As games get older, the communities tend to gravitate towards a specific version of a game, so crossplay helps to keep all of the platforms alive. This can even work retroactively. Some games like Overwatch have added crossplay deep into the game's life to help revitalize the community. Not having a segregated community also helps in competitive games like fighting games, where tournaments no longer need to limit entrance to a specific console. Another strength of crossplay is that it enables friends to play with each other regardless of platform. This means players can always play on their desired platform and play however they want without being forced into buying a specific console just because they want to play with their friends. I've personally played a lot of games with friends that I wouldn't have been able to play with if it wasn't for crossplay, and I think this is the most obvious use case for crossplay. Those two really are the biggest pros in my mind, but there are some other minor advantages to crossplay, like it enforces all versions of the game to be updated simultaneously. There's also quite a lot of pros which only affect developers, like only having to maintain a single networking system, but I'm not going to go heavily into those. Let's keep this fairly high level and move on to the cons. I think the biggest and most obvious con of crossplay is the lack of input parity. In a lot of genres, like FPS, mouse and keyboard players are seen to have a big advantage. PC also allows for higher refresh rates and lower input lag, which can be important in competitive games. This can be quite controversial. In FPS games, controller players are given aim assist to compensate, but however you tune it, you'll never make everyone happy. Due to the relative ease of using a controller on PC, this isn't really an issue when it's the other way around, but it's still a sore point for many. For this reason, I actually don't think FPS games are that good a genre for crossplay. Outside of input parity and fair play, there are also some stigmas that people hold against certain platforms. Some PC gamers believe that console gamers are likely to have unstable connections, and some console gamers believe that PC gamers are more likely to cheat. So long as a game has good cheat protection, I don't think this is that big of a deal, and I think these stigmas should go away over time. Again, there are other cons and drawbacks for both players and developers, but I think input parity is the most relevant one. With the pros and cons briefly outlined, let's talk about some good use cases. Firstly, for any co-op game, there's almost no drawback to the players. It makes it easier for friends to play together, and the question of fairness isn't really relevant because you're not competing against each other. Also, games where either a controller is the best input option, or the choice of input device doesn't really matter, are also good use cases. Examples of this would be fighting games and racing games, although any turn-based game will also work quite well. Niche games automatically fit as a good use case, as by nature these games have issues forming a stable community. Crossplay can help keep these games alive and keep a stable community. To be honest, the only genres which wouldn't really benefit from crossplay are the ones where input parity is a big issue. This means that FPS games and other competitive games where mouse and keyboard has a distinct advantage might not be best suited for crossplay. My opinions on use cases aside though, let's talk about the future of crossplay. With Xbox Play Anywhere, it seems that most Xbox first-party games are going to support crossplay. A lot of other non-Xbox games are supporting it as well. Sony are being a bit slower to adapt to it, but they have done in the past with Street Fighter V, and I do believe that they will eventually become more open to crossplay. If they don't, it could lead to PlayStation players becoming isolated from other platforms, but I really do think they will eventually embrace crossplay like other platforms have. Regardless of what Sony do, crossplay games are only going to become more and more common. Personally, I think it's a good thing. If it's done well, it creates a single unified community and allows friends to play with each other regardless of platform. I will admit though that as a developer who's worked on crossplay, I am rather biased. If I had to make a bold prediction, I'd say it won't be long before most notable AAA multiplayer games will support crossplay in some form. I realise this video has been a bit different, but I wanted to talk a bit more generally about some gaming concepts in addition to just doing reviews. I am going to stick mostly to reviews, but I might do more videos in this vein if there's anything I feel inclined to talk about. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, it really helps. Even if you didn't, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.